All right, let's talk about experimental and avant-garde music. What are the best ways to practice this music, and what are the best ways to teach this music? That is what I'm going to discuss in this video. Now, experimental and avant-garde styles are ones that often fall under the radar, if not completely just are ignored in a lot of spaces. And I feel like experimental music teaches things that no other genre does, because you have rock and roll and you have jazz and you have classical music and you have all that stuff, and experimental music teaches you how to sort of interpret things in a very different way. You're interpreting what you're hearing in a totally different way, in a much more sort of just free-flowing way compared to jazz or rock and roll or any of that. And so it's teaching that. It's teaching just patience, because in experimental styles, a lot of that stuff is really slow to develop, which is good. And so you have to be super patient. You have to be playing the same thing, over and over and over and over and over again until it's ready to develop and change. And so that's another very important thing. That experimental music teaches that not a lot of genres teach, in the same way. And so I really feel like experimental music should be something that people are exposed to as early as possible. And, in middle school and elementary school, and you're just introducing all those concepts, and then they can get more advanced in it if they want to keep, developing those skills. But I really think experimental music is not something that should just be limited to, undergraduate, college classrooms, because that's the first space that I encountered it in, was actually in college. So I didn't really play or perform or listen to, for that matter, any sort of experimental music until I was 18 years old. And I feel like it was wonderful that I had the opportunity to do that, and I'm still continuing to have the opportunity to do that. But it's something that, I wish was, talked about a lot earlier. So with that, what are some ways to teach, experimental music and just experimental improvisation? So I think the first thing that you do in your band class is you don't talk about anything. You just have the students play, and they may be complete beginners, but you just have them play. There are no parameters. The only thing is that you cannot break the instrument. So no breaking instruments, but just play. And I think this is something that somebody told me about, a really, really good method. So this is not my method. This is somebody else's method that I've got to give them credit. And they, in their class, would tell their students to create 30 new sounds on their instrument. And that was the first thing that they were doing in their class. And their band class was, or orchestra class, or whatever it was, create 30 new sounds. And again, no breaking of instruments, but just play and create new sounds. Again, these students might be total beginners. It doesn't matter. Just have them create, just have them just touch the instrument and have experience with this instrument. And it doesn't matter if they're playing it incorrectly, just have them do that. Then what you can do are activities, where you can do, you can stand in the middle of the classroom, have everybody sit in a circle, and you can stand in the middle of the classroom and just make very simple gestures. You're not conducting at all, in the traditional sense. You are conducting in a way, but you're just making these super simple gestures, moving your arm, doing things like this, putting your hand up, putting your hand down, jumping up in the air once, just super simple gestures, and then they will respond. And you keep doing that and develop the piece. And this whole thing is a piece of music, and you're developing it. And then you have other people other students volunteer, stand in the middle and just do really simple gestures, and all the other students will respond. So that's one really, really great exercise to develop these skills, performing this in this type of music that a lot of people are not exposed to. And another exercise is where you write letters on the board and they have to improvise to those letters. Again, it has no parameters, just as long as they're improvising to what they perceive as, the letters. So play the letters. You could write words, play the words. Have a picture, a painting or a photograph, play that photograph. Do that. And it's actually quite simple because they will perform, with what they think corresponds to the word or the picture or whatever it is. And so it's a very, very good exercise. Another thing that you can do is just have your students create a texture, no parameters, but just create a texture on their instrument. And so that can be anything. And it just has to be a consistent thing. They can't stop doing it, and they can't change until you tell them. So that's another really great exercise. Just create a texture and do that. Another exercise could be moving around the room and just trying different combinations of instrumentations, having people, it doesn't matter what instrument, but having two people stand together in a corner of a room and do something, and then change the instrumentation around. You can have them do physical movements. That's something that's so important, even in just general music education, is to have them move around. But in experimental styles, and you're teaching them how to improvise in this totally different way that, again, many people are not really subject to very often, is you just have them move around, have them change, their technique of playing. You can show them different techniques if the situation presents itself, but again, it's a lot of autonomy on the students. Another thing that you can do is have students play each other's instruments. That's something that I've done a lot in free improvisation ensembles. Play each other's instruments. It doesn't matter if you don't know how to play the instrument. Just do something, and do something that works, and trust me, it will work. So that's another really great strategy. Now, as you progress in your class, if you want to keep doing experimental stuff in your class, which I would highly encourage, another thing that you can do is have your students invent a notation system. Do invented notation, and you cannot use traditional musical notation. It has to be something different. It has to be, it could be anything. It could be a painting or, anything, and just have the students come in, the next class and perform each other's notation. Have them all participate in that so that they can all interpret each other's notation. It can't just be that the person who, invented their own notation system performs on it. I think that doesn't really serve the entire purpose. I think what needs to happen is that, everybody performs, and the person who invents who's presenting their invented notation cannot describe how to perform it. It has to be that the students are doing their own interpretation of it. And finally, encouraging listening to experimental music. Listen to, Fred Frith is a very, very good example. John Oswald, Marilyn Crispell, another very good example. And so, there are hundreds and hundreds of artists and improvisatory ensembles out there that you can have your kids listen to, but just have them listen and take inspiration. And so I think experimental music is something that is super, super important because, again, it teaches a very different kind of listening, and a very consistent kind of listening and a much deeper kind of listening than exists in a lot of other genres. And it also teaches a lot of other skills, collaboration and all this stuff that other genres of music also teach. But I think, avant-garde music is such fun to perform. I really have so much fun with it. And it's just so exciting whenever I have the opportunity to perform it. And I'm thankfully I do have lots of opportunities, and so I just think it's really, really important, and definitely something to keep in mind if you're a band director. Have your students do improvisations and things like that. So with that, that wraps up this video. So if you'd like to see more videos like this, please leave that in the comments. So please subscribe to this channel, like this video, share it, and do all that. So thanks for watching, and have a good day.